And there is the president. Let's listen in.
For California, I want to briefly speak about what's happening in Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. Today, thanks to the quick action of my administration over the past few days, Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe. Your deposits will be there when you need them. Small businesses across the country, the deposit accounts at these banks can breathe easier knowing they'll be able to pay their workers and pay their bills. And their hardworking employees can breathe easier as well. Last week, when we learned of the problems of the banks and the impact they could have on jobs of small businesses and banking system overall, I instructed my team to act quickly to protect these interests. They've done that. They've done that. On Friday, the government regulator in charge, the FDIC, took control of Silicon Valley Bank's assets. And over the weekend, it took control of Signature Bank's assets. Treasury Secretary Yellen and a team of banking regulators have taken action, immediate action. And here are the highlights. First, all customers who had deposits in these banks can rest assured, rest assured they'll be protected and they'll have access to their money as of today. That includes small businesses across the country that bank there and need to make payroll, pay their bills, and stay open for business. No losses will, and this is an important point, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Let me repeat that. No losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Instead, the money will come from the fees that banks pay into the Deposit Insurance Fund. Because of the actions that our regulators have already taken, every American should feel confident that their deposits will be there if and when they need them. Second, the management of these banks will be fired. If the bank is taken over by FDIC, the people running the bank should not work there anymore. Third, investors in the banks will not be protected. They knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, investors lose their money. That's how capitalism works. And fourth, there are important questions of how these banks got into the circumstance in the first place. We must get the full accounting of what happened and why those responsible can be held accountable. In my administration, no one is above the law. And finally, we must reduce the risks of this happening again. During the Obama-Biden administration, we put in place tough requirements on banks like Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, including the Dodd-Frank law to make sure that the crisis we saw in 2008 would not happen again. Unfortunately, the last administration rolled back some of these requirements. I'm going to ask Congress and the banking regulators to strengthen the rules for banks to make it less likely this kind of bank failure would happen again, and to protect American jobs and small businesses. Look, the bottom line is this. Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe. Your deposits are safe. Let me also assure you we will not stop at this. We'll do whatever is needed. On top of all this, let's also take a look at a moment to put the situation in a broader context. We've made strong economic progress in the past 2 years. We've created more than 12 million new jobs, more jobs in 2 years than any president has ever created in a single 4-year term. Unemployment is below 4% for 14 straight months. Take-home pay for workers is going up, especially for lower and middle-income workers. And we've seen record numbers of people apply to start new businesses, more than 10 million of them, more than 10 million applications over the last 2 years starting businesses. Now we need to keep this progress going. That's what swift action that my administration over the past few years is all about. Protecting depositors, protecting the banking system, protecting the economic gains we've made together for the American people. Thank you, God bless you, and may God protect our troops. See you in California.
Mr. President, what do you know right now about why this happened? And can you assure Americans that there won't be a ripple effect?
Well, the president there with some notable comments. One, addressing steps already taken by his administration. He says Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe. Your deposits will be there when you need them. That is a step taken over the weekend, that by this morning, depositors will have access to their funds. Also notable, Erica, he says that no losses will be borne by taxpayers. This is going to be covered by fees paid into the system by banks. And bank leaders, the president said, will be fired.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's bring in now a senior White House correspondent, MJ Lee, CNN chief business correspondent, Christine Romans. So, Christine, let's pick up, because I heard you as we were both furiously scribbling notes here as we were listening to the president, the fact that he did point out management will be fired here, saying, listen, if they were at the helm when this happened, they don't deserve to be here now.
Yeah, and they made some big mistakes, it looks like, in hindsight, right, when they didn't manage their interest rate risk properly. This is a company that took in a lot of money in deposits for many, many years and put those deposits into long-dated treasuries. And then as interest rates rose, those became less valuable. And at the same time, when people started taking their deposits out because the tech sector had turned, then suddenly there was this mismatch for this bank. And as they tried to raise money, they raised actually alarms that they were in trouble. And then you had a run on the bank. So that management is out.
Christine, I have to ask you, because this is a first step, and I heard from a lot of folks this weekend saying the administration has to step in now to guarantee all even uninsured deposits, of course, because the FDIC limits to $250,000. Many banks, big VC firms, but also small businesses have far more money in their accounts. Biden says, we will not stop at this. We will do whatever is needed. Notable as well. What does that mean exactly? What additional steps was he opening up to if necessary?
Well, he talked about more regulation to make sure this doesn't happen again, and I think that's really important. We have Dodd-Frank banking reforms after the last financial crisis, and there had been lobbying, and in 2018, a loosening of some of those for banks just like this one. So I think there's going to be a post-mortem look at whether these kinds of banks should all have better stress tests and have higher capital requirements. So that's a conversation to have. But this is just such a unique moment overall. I mean, do you want the federal government guaranteeing every investment, every bank deposit, and then you're essentially nationalizing the banks here? So I think it's important to note that in normal times, $250,000 or less, your deposits are guaranteed by the federal government. In this case, they're guaranteeing all of those deposits. That's a really new moment.
MJ, to that point, the president said he's going to be asking Congress to strengthen those rules. We heard from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle weighing in over the weekend. Is there a plan from the White House? Is there a plan even from the president to speak to lawmakers and to get a sense of what that would look like when you're dealing, of course, with a divided Congress?
Yeah, Erica, I thought the president's accountability portion of the speech was really notable. First and foremost, the president saying straight up that the managers at these banks are going to be fired and that the people who are responsible for what happened, they're going to be held accountable. Now, we don't know what exactly that accountability looks like. And he made clear that there's going to be a little bit of time that is taken to figure out and get a full accounting of what led to these banks' failures. But I think just in the big picture, yes, the president is going to be speaking to members of Congress. You would expect that there are going to be these kinds of conversations, sort of looking back at the last few years, some of the relaxation of some of these regulations over the last few years to try to figure out, well, how can we actually prevent this kind of thing from happening again? But I think for this morning, this moment, it was very important for the White House. Remember, these remarks were added at the very last minute, late last night, for the president to get out there in front of the cameras and directly address the American people and say this line, which was key. He said, the banking system is safe. Your deposits will be there when you need them. He really wanted to sort of reassure the American people, you know, many of whom obviously have recollections going back to the 2008 financial crisis, that is not the scenario that we are about to see, that there's not going to be some domino effect. And by the way, he took a lot of credit for what he called were immediate and quick actions by his administration last night to prevent that kind of scenario from happening.
Well, a message to the public, certainly also a message to the markets that open in 20 minutes now, watching those comments, I'm sure, very closely. MJ Lee at the White House, Christine Romans, thanks so much.